Another edition of First Person, again sponsored by the Ruin Camp Company in Fort Loramie. 82 years of experience for residential, farm, and commercial. If you got wet ground, wet property, wet farms, whatever, they'll make water work for you. Call Phil Barhorst in Fort Loramie. Again, the Ruin Camp Company. This is our first show in 2015. It's a little bit difficult during basketball season to match up schedules with people. You have appointments sometimes that you have to break. You don't get a regular upload of this particular segment. And we're fortunate today to be in Jackson Center with the coach of the Tigers, that being Scott Elchert. And I looked up the other day, Scott, and it was exactly 3 years ago when we did this last. Your 2012 team that went to the Final Four. We'll talk about that a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit about the cycle of basketball and the cycle of athletes. And you had such a great group that year with the Meyer kid and Gavin Wildermuth, who's still playing with you. And that cycle has come back a little bit for you this year because as we sit here today, you're 8-2, I think. And people are excited again in Jackson Center about basketball.
Yeah, a lot of it does go back to that 2012 team, and really even a couple years prior to that, we really established a good, solid foundation of a program, and 2012 kind of took that and ran. And we were fortunate in 2013, the following year, we followed that up with 22 wins. And then this past season, we were very inexperienced, and we were actually pleased that we were able to get 16 wins, and now this group is basically all back from last year's team.
I want to bring up the fact of the semifinal win in the state tournament and what one game, and you had just alluded to that, to build on something like that team. They've only come around sometimes for a program like this once every quarter century.
Sure.
You know, you go back to Meyer's dad back in 1985 or whenever that was. That one game, I don't know that I've ever seen a venue more excited. Everyone from Jackson Center was there. You played well, you won, your kids were absolutely on top of their game. And what that one game, I know it didn't go well for you with Berlin Highland the next day, but that was like playing the Celtics.
Yes.
What that one game meant to you and meant to your basketball program and this community?
Yeah, well, it was huge for, like you said, for a lot of reasons. It gave us a great foundation, but just the excitement of the game to come out with a win in the state semifinals, and when we had our backs against the wall, I think a couple of different times we were down 17 points, and it just showed a lot of perseverance on our kids' part, and a number of kids made big plays in the second half to kind of get us over the hump. And you mentioned Gavin, and it's funny, it's hard to believe that Gavin's actually still part of this team because he was a young freshman back then, but hit two big free throws at the end of the game that gave us that 3-point lead and kind of sealed the deal.
The point of it is, I don't know if people appreciate it enough, and I asked you after the fact, if you'll remember, do you appreciate that experience? And I don't know if people get it, how hard it is to actually get to that stage and win. Ask John Willoughby.
Yeah.
Ask some of the other coaches who have struggled for so long to get to Columbus and get there and just get blown out or lose or something and not even get to the final game. What the value of that is.
Well, it's a dream come true for a coach and for your players because, as you said, it's difficult to get to Columbus, and in our neck of woods, it's difficult to just get out of Piqua on a regular basis because the sectional is so tough. So I feel like I had full appreciation for that because I had coached for a number of years, and you wonder as a coach if you're ever going to get that opportunity. So when we won that regional game to get to Columbus, we kind of made a vow that for one thing's for sure, we weren't going to take anything for granted, and we were going to greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Scott Elchert from Jackson Center is our guest this week on First Person. Here we are in 2015. You've been here a long time now.
Yeah.
I mean, you came up in Upper Sandusky, I think, and previous to here, you got a few gray whiskers now in your beard. And yet, the one thing that people talk about in terms of Jackson basketball is consistency. You talked about 16 wins last year, and that may be a down year, considering where you have been recently to that. But yet, the consistency. And here you are at 8-2, right in the middle of your schedule. The expectations, the anticipations here, and I don't think you would say this is one of your best or most talented groups. They just find a way to play and win.
Yeah, what this group has been able to do is they've really grown together and are great at making the extra pass and not just settling on the first open shot and getting everybody involved. And they continue to just develop better and better chemistry. And, you know, I like where we're headed.
This next question is going to be something that's going to attract a lot of attention in Shelby County League basketball because, as we mentioned, you're at the midway point here. You've been through your schedule once. You narrowly lost, and I know that was a game that you felt like you could have won at Russia. You get them again. You get Laramie again. You're going to get Anna again, and you eke one out here against Anna a couple of weeks ago. We saw that game. What's your expectation? What this is going to be like for the next month? Because you get all these people again. You've seen them once now. What will the second time around be like for you?
Well, I think in this league, the one thing is coaches know each other's teams so well. So the second time it is always difficult.
You can't hide anything.
No, for sure. So the one thing that I've make sure I kind of pride ourselves in as a team is we take no one for granted. No matter what their record is and no matter who it is every night, we prepare equally for every single team. So from the top team in our league all the way down to the bottom team, we do prepare equally, and our kids really, respect all their opponents.
You got a state-ranked team in Russia in this league. You've played them once. They beat you over there, and I hear this every day. Paul's got a great group of kids. They've grown up together. They play well together. How good are the Russia Raiders?
The Russia Raiders are extremely good, and that's why we were disappointed the night we went over there. We felt like we had put ourselves in a position to potentially get a win, knowing that that's going to be very difficult to do against that team on most nights. Because I personally think not only are they one of the best D4 teams in the state, I think in just about any division they can play with anybody because they've got great size and athleticism, great depth. And they have different guys that step up on different nights. And that's a making of a good team. You look at Fort Laramie and the Redskins the other night. We saw them against Versailles. They get beat by 15. The game was actually closer than that. And Corey Britton said to me afterwards, we're 8-4, but those 4 losses, 3 of them against state-ranked teams. We haven't lost to any chopped liver. We're playing good people. Talk a little bit about Laramie. Yeah, they're very good because the Braun kid is playing at a very high level right now. Shot it great the other night. Yeah, he can shoot the 3, and the one thing that I think he's doing better this year is putting the ball on the floor and scoring and either pulling up or getting to the rack. The Grant Oberdeen inside can be a handful for them, and they've just had other younger kids step up. So they're a dangerous team, and there's no doubt that they've played an extremely tough schedule. And Anna on any given night, it could just give you nightmares because they have so many good athletes there. Yeah, for sure, and they gave us nightmares for practically 3.5 quarters until we were able to finally find a way to pull that out. You mentioned Gavin Wildermuth back, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk specifically about your kids. We talked to him after the game, the Anna game here the other night. Been in his programs, it seems like forever. Tell me a little bit about building around him. You got his younger brother coming up in the program. You got some other kids that obviously feed off his experience, his energy, his intellect, his instinct for the game of basketball. Yeah, I think Gavin has a lot of assets, but I think the one thing that makes him such a good player is his basketball court intelligence. So we put a scouting report out there. He really understands it. That helps him from a defensive standpoint. He's an extremely good defender and typically draws the toughest defensive assignments. And he's very unselfish with the basketball. So he's done a great job really over the last 2 years of leading, because going into last year's season, he was the only one with any kind of real varsity experience, and all the other kids were younger. And so, yeah, his brother's a nice player for us. We have Drew Sosby at the point guard position, who is, Drew's extremely dangerous because he's a very good point guard, but he can shoot the ball extremely well too. And he's had some big games for us. So, and all the other kids we're blending in are just doing a great job of really becoming a team. This makes you feel good too, because on that night that we saw you here a week ago, Saturday night I think it was, against Anna, Gavin really struggled
scoring the basketball in the first half. Had a miserable shooting night, and then came back when the game was on the line in the fourth quarter and in overtime, 7 for 7 from the free throw line, which I think is a trademark of his. When you put him on the line, he doesn't miss, and he was good as gold that night.
Yeah, and of course, that's one of the things that you would hope to get out of your senior leader who
did that as a freshman at the state tournament.
That's right,
yeah.
That's right. So it was a carryover effect, and you know, as a collective group, we're actually shooting really well from the free throw line. I think currently we're at 78% from the free throw line. So with him and Drew Sosby, who both shoot free throws really well, we feel like if we can get a lead, you know, late in the game, that's a big asset that we have.
And if you want to know how good 78% is, the state average is about 62.
Yeah, well.
So that tells you a little bit about basketball here at Jackson Center. Hey, great to talk with you. Best of luck down the stretch. We'll be watching at 8-2 at this point. You're going to have a great finish in the Shelby County League schedule here over the month of January and the first couple of weeks in February up to the tournament draw. That wraps up this week's edition with Scott Elchert, again brought to you by the Ruin Camp Company in Fort Laramie. As we mentioned, 80 plus years now of experience, farm, residential, and commercial. They'll make water work for you. For the sponsors and Coach Elchert, thanks again for your support of high school sports here on PressProsMagazine.com. We'll see you again next time with another edition of First Person.